Um, Welcome everybody. I think we should start because people who were here on time have been waiting now for about 30 minutes. And we know there's so much to see in Milan. But I'm very grateful and proud that so many of you came here for the first morning of the Salone, the first minute almost of the first morning of Salone, to listen to the presentation of PROOFF. Since we have very little time, I will introduce quickly the three speakers of this morning, and after their presentations there will be time for questions and debate. Sitting next to me is Leo Schouten, who is the founder and director of PROOFF, and who will be giving the first presentation. Next to him, Jurgen Bey, designer and director, founder of Studio Makkink Bey, but also together with Leo in PROOFFLab. And next to him, Ben van Berkel, architect, but also you're not a fashion designer, although I know you're interested in fashion. But apart from that, you're everything else. You design huge buildings, you design beautiful pavilions, and also ceramics, chairs, and your project for PROOFF is where we are sitting in. You will be the third speaker. I would like to give the floor to Leo first.
Okay, I think it's more easy to stand. Now perhaps the introduction is, of course, clear that I'm founder and director of PROOFF, but also I have some background, and the background is about 35 years, near to 40 years, don't ask me how old I am, but experience in the field of office projects, contract, furniture, and mainly design orientated, working together with architects. So that's my background. I think what is the main thing is that PROOFF is not a manufacturer, and I see that as a big advantage, because being not a manufacturer is that you have more freedom to think together with designers and together with architects, and not think basically already out of the production. So because production facilities are sometimes also limited, and although we also see limited in what we work together with designers, I think it's important that you can choose in your supply chain the partners you need for the product that had to be developed. The other thing is also that we have a sort of a vision that we can see coming from the market, coming from the needs of the people. So that's also a difference. So we are totally not thinking, say, from the tunnel of a production, but more, I think, feeling free, open to discuss with the market and with the partnerships and architects and the designers. So I think that's really an important issue, and also I think it's helping to create more, things which could be an extra or could be perhaps the ultimate to find what have to be done. The second thing is I think I'm an entrepreneur. And entrepreneurship is something I think is not just about money or about profit. Of course you need money. I think the basic thing is that it's all about the benefits. Because I have passion with the office furniture, I have passion with product furniture, I have passion with architects, then you go, I think, always until the end for the maximum. And money is helping, of course, and you need money. And of course we can talk about people, planet, profit, but I always think passion starts first. And then people planning profit, okay, let's make the profit then a product. And if you do your things well, automatically you have some money left. What you can live, what you can share with others, but also what you can invest again in new things. And I always go for new things. It's not the thing from now, it's the thing what we need perhaps in the next future. And to see with people what we can create again. Then I think, we talk about co-creation, and Christine was saying, okay, well, the subject is clear, but perhaps not totally clear what exactly the meaning of it. I think it's like working in a multidisciplinary team with the architect, with the designer, and sometimes also with the influence from clients. I think it's really important, like in a normal private relation, to give each other enough space and respect on the discipline which everybody has chosen. Because then at the end, if you give the space to each other, you can create more than if you try to do, like perhaps a businessman is mainly saying, okay, this is not possible because then you see only hiccups in cost, or you see only hiccups in is it to be sold. And therefore I think you have to look about people with a certain same culture background, which you feel well with and which you are open to work with. I think that's for me the most important thing. And ending also about Proof, I think we are just started in 2006. And 2006 and 2013 is already, well, not really a long time. But we are trying to be very critical on what we are doing in bringing a product or bringing product into your collection, and not to say, okay, this could be interesting to deal with and to have to earn an easy living with it. That's not the subject. I think it's looking what's happening outside, in new ways of working, in where people meet, in where people have to be perhaps influenced by furniture or room solutions. To do more intuitively their thing. And I think that's the most important thing, that people are feeling themselves very well without really thinking how they use it, but they use it. And I think if that is something we can create in all the products we will bring also in the next future, I will be totally happy. Thank you.
I have two questions. Sorry, wrong one. Yeah, I have already two questions for you.
Yep.
I've been wondering. One, largely I think this project arises, as you said, from passion.
Yes.
And as you said, from having the means, through other ways, your other business,
Yeah.
to have create new ideas.
Yeah.
So how do you choose? How do you choose your partners?
How
You
do
said something about same cultural background, but
Well,
it's not. Must be more.
Well, it's not well, I think exactly choosing partners, also seeing what partners are doing, and to say, okay, that could be something or that they have something in itself. It's a certain feeling. So I think like entrepreneurship, it's not rational. It's also, I think, the stomach feeling, and I think the stomach feeling has helped me mostly to come to the good partnerships.
It's gut feeling.
Yeah.
And it's probably you also give a lot of trust.
I think trust and loyalty is all about the main thing, yes. Yeah.
How did you meet Jurgen?
Jurgen, yeah, well, that's a history. He basically started officially doing Interpolis. The project of New Ways of Working was already a decade again. It's 18 years ago, 1995. And the third phase was also a phase where Jurgen was coming in. He was bringing then the ear chair at that moment, and the ear chair, of course, was an icon and a solution which was not really before already designed then. To have a room in a room really working as a room in a room, I think that was a great creation from his hand. And from that point, I thought in 2004 to talk with Jurgen and to say what do you have in mind with the ear chair, because the industry is, in my opinion, very conservative, or just looking about quickly money. And I said, perhaps this is a moment to start the own collection, which then is now Proof. And do you like to hang on and to have your first product in that collection? And step by step, well, we are not married yet, but in a certain way we are working very good together.
You are going to talk to your new wife now.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you.
Jurgen, would you want to start the presentation? Will you be talking just about Proof projects or also other projects?
No, just about Proof project and basically the PROOFFLab, how we started it, and also how we present it now here in Milan.
You want to stand or sit?
No, I like to sit, I think.
Okay.
How would it work? Who is in charge of the... You have it where? No, not working. Ah. And then, which one did you press?
Rechts. Volgens mij. Hebben we de rest moeten toch door? Ja, oké.
Yeah, for us it basically started when we were working in an office in Alexanderpolder, which was about a place that we didn't own. We were just taking care of it, which I think was also the introduction that I still believe ownership stopped, and it really became more about the collectiveness and shared spaces, and with shared spaces you immediately come into shared knowledge. And it has to be that if the value changes about nothingness getting important, you also have to develop a new language, because if you share space, then how do you know that things are the way you expect it when you enter it? So also like which place are you going to use, like the open space, and with that you have to develop new tools and a new behavior of the collectiveness. And like if it's not owned by anyone, then how do you continue, and who can benefit of things? And I think education is therefore still the best situation, because there you never raise that question. You never ask a student, okay, do you want an answer from 10 words or 100 words? 100 words is more expensive than 10 words. It doesn't exist. You know, if you're in part of education, you put everything on the table, because as soon as you start thinking like, shall I tell what I'm already busy with, then before you know, you cannot answer anything to your students anymore. And you believe in progress and you call it learning, but the whole idea is that you're part of the next generation. So you step ahead on that sense. And I think that raises also the idea of like, what kind of language do we need and what kind of furniture? And I think it really stops with like this whole idea of ownership, which also means that designers will work on different, so as I am fighting. And which happened at the same time as you got the sharing office community, and it was beneficial because you needed less space. But I also still believe that the biggest quality is that when you arrive at 5 o'clock in the morning, you have the whole space for yourself, so you can really enjoy the big space. If you arrive at 4, you know it will be very busy and crowded, so you meet a lot of people. So you can change your calendar by the time of being in the office, and therefore it gives you, in that sense, more freedom, because you spread it, but not because it needs to be spread, because it's practical, but more the way you want to behave and the way you want to perceive the space. And I think with the Google Calendar and the shared knowledge that we got through the internet, it works better and better, because we're so adjusted to this kind of calendar that is not made out of paper, but changes as fast as the wind, which comes with the telephone, that whenever you call, you can meet, but also re-meet. You can also, like any appointment now is like as fluid as water, because you make them now, but they change within the hour because of the change of the calendar, which means that you move a lot more and change with that. Like, how does it, like, I hate it when... So for us, like starting with PROOFF as a company of furniture, we also immediately thought that we wanted to develop like a common place where we could develop new ideas that were not owned by PROOFF, but that are possible to develop. And also, if we think about that, then is that me? The slow office movement, which started with us with the slow car, which means that you can move easily from one place to the other, which also means that on the road does not exist anymore as a waiting situation, but it's like every time when you are somewhere you can work and think. So it means that you stretches your day, but also that you would like, besides being a brand, also like a movement where you get collective knowledge. And I think also that we are at a time that we are still developing it, like what would be then a movement and how would you work on that. And that's where for us comes in PROOFFLab, because with the PROOFFLab we are depending on the brand, but we are also independent. We are allowed to move besides what is really needed. We are allowed to raise questions, and we want to develop slowly a small community. So PROOFFLab at home started by first building the house, which is basically the graphics and the questions that are raised. And every year we want to ask a tandem to think about a topic and then see how they will collect. And now we had a very short time, so it's a very short introduction. So they started independent, but we choose in a way that we slowly want to develop like a European community first, and then maybe we will go then worldwide. But I really believe the same discussion we have now about Europe, like is it like, should you stand for your own country, or is it the collectiveness? And is it just a matter of time, like you invest more and more, at a certain point it will work. And for us, starting with the tandem means that we work with an architectural group and a design group, because also at the moment you have to raise the questions from two sides. Because if the office is not just anymore a room with a piece of furniture, it means it's a landscape. And if it's a landscape, you have to think architectonically, but also on detail. And you see the interdisciplinary not happening, that everyone does everything. I would rather say you start working from different fields and you get into this discussion. I would rather say a debate about where we are heading for. And so to start from both directions, starting with an architect and starting with a designer, thinking about one project or topic, what will it involve? And the reason we choose certain people is also that my hope is that they will like connect and probably start doing projects together. Because I think still the nicest thing of being able to give opportunities is what comes out of it and not what you had in mind with it. Because if you had it in mind with it, you could better do it yourself, because that's much faster. And the nice thing is to give an opportunity is that you get at places you would never expect, because you raise them as question, and you basically know that will definitely not come with what you expect. And that is the goal also, to think about the collectiveness. So within this first tandem, we started with the Studio Makkink Bey and Ode PDB by the Jijs, which was when we asked them, it was the architects Vilde, Vink and Tailleux, but when they started, they already like developed a collective bigger, which also means that like you start with a small group and it gets bigger by the moment. And they did two projects. So we raised them the question, well, first of all, we had to develop the home, because if you invite someone, you also have to have a place where you would meet. So that was basically the starting point, and that is our home is a little bit like our thinking that we do within Studio Makkink, but we try to transform it to PROOFFLab so that it gets raised bigger, because we could keep it for ourselves, but I'd rather put these things on the stand and then start discussing it. Although it's still like a collectiveness that is being based in as we say with PROOFFLab. So we first made like these drawings where we think about the landscape, how it can change, what if warehouses, if it gets sold out, and they become like the new interior living areas, which happens basically in all the airports, which is already like inside, outside space, which isn't owned by a country anymore, but by economics. But that can change. What if roads would not exist anymore, but they are pavement? That would mean that transportation would completely change. And what if everything we need to keep up the building, like the cranes, but also like the cleaning of the walls, if they would become new spaces, then the office could change and outside would be something else than inside. So we try to develop a landscape, and through this landscape we start asking people and invited. And the first thing as the office we did like the dormery, which is like it's the smallest piece of architecture that is not within regulation. You are allowed to extend your house if it's like on the roof and if it's out of sight on the back. So then you can do everything, and normally you only extend space. But the basic idea is that you extend it by the office, so that you can, when you work at home, you can still go to the office, even from outside and inside. And so this is like a first catch-up. And we also made a dictionary which we gave to the architect and the product designer, not to say this is how you do it, but it's starting to develop our own language and our own possibilities. And with that, they started to work from their both angles, which resulted by Studio Makkink Bey by the cloud boxes, which is not about the language, if you think about acoustics, only thinking about can you take away the sound. It's rather thinking about what happens if you like damping things, which means that like the vision gets different and the sound changes, but it's not completely gone. And basically they made boxes of latex that work as clouds, and they are like to be used and grow through their use. So they are as a starting point, and slowly they'll evolve and develop themselves in the project. And they are here also, so they probably can tell you all the detailing about it. And the other project is Ode PDW by the Jijs, and which is basically the deconstruction of the wall, and then the most industrial walls, which is the Gierok, the how do you call it, like gypsum walls, and the metal studs, which is basically the cheapest way of building, which is only seen as something that you do behind the walls. And they developed a cabinet, or I would rather say like deconstruct the walls with these materials, and then you will develop into usable walls. And also they can tell a lot more, but the beauty of it is that it's more about the drawings than it's about the actual build it material. And it's more about the drawings, that as an architect you develop the drawings and then they can be made by the customer. So and that raises questions about, for instance, about these regulations, that when you want to build, you have to, I don't know how to say it in English, but you have to write down everything down, and anyone who wants can sign in. So then you don't know what the product has, and this is something that you will start before it's actually the product. So you still have the architect involved in the brand. It's like it's less complicated, but then I need a lot of more words with it, which I can do afterwards. And they can express even better. And so my motto is like, think like an artist, act like the industry, and be a learning institute. This is me.
Okay, we leave that up there.
Okay.
Are you concluding?
That is the concluding, yes.
Great. I just have a very concrete question. How is Tandem related to PROOFFLab related to PROOFF? How is
Well, what we do is we give the opportunity to the Tandem, which
you from PROOFFLab. So
PROOFFLab, like
you is giving you the opportunity, and you are re-giving.
Yes, let's say that we get a funding for PROOFFLab.
Yeah.
So we get like a certain amount that we can spend every year, which is freely spent, in the sense that of course we have discussions about what are the stretch in which we do it, but we are free to discuss, and the goal is to rethink, but also that the PROOFF will be the first for the outcome to discuss with the designers whether it will develop to a product or that it stays within the hands of the designer. So that is like the first, but what we do is we have an open opportunity in which we are able to discuss certain topics, which is now the acoustics, which next time can be lighting. So every question we can raise, in which we build a community, because the people we ask, we would really like to be involved with. I think their work is really great, and so I think to be able to work with them and get that opportunity, that's how it ends. And it's also showing that through projects we are able to develop the next generation products.
I see Leo nodding frantically, and I'd long to ask him a question, but I want to give Ben the floor first, and then we do. Yeah, because it's interesting. It goes back and forth, and it's all about co-creation, and Ben will be talking about that. And sharing knowledge as well. Huh?
I think the two names, UNStudio and PROOFF, give already the indication of collaboration. We as UNStudio, as you can see here, we have always turned ourselves around, reflected ourselves in many ways, and rethink how we operate and how we collaborate in different ways. And you know maybe that we were first called from Berkel and Bos, then we moved to UNStudio, UN as a united network, but now we believe that we slowly move into from a network practice into a knowledge-based practice, and that idea is that we discover that with all the opportunities and new techniques one works with in architecture and product design, that it is now so fascinating to develop particular knowledge communities, as we argue for in the company. So if we look at or research on the level of new materials or new programmatic research, or the way how we work with new computational techniques, that with this we can not only involve our quality of work much better in the way how we produce our work, but particularly if we collaborate, and I will talk about it more in detail later, then we think we can also outsource and communicate with the outside world. So what is quite interesting is what we are doing right now. We are maybe one of the first architectural offices. We're going also online and outsource our information or knowledge, and we will collaborate online with other designers or clients and everyone in the field. So this is a new development. So we move from this network practice into a knowledge practice related to these knowledge platforms. And this is related to the way how, if you look at the world right now and the development of the world, that we started all with cooperative strategies and collaborative strategies, but today, if we think about merger and creative communication and open source strategies, then co-creation, of course, is what we all know is the future. It doesn't mean that we don't design anymore. It's not so that I'm not actually holding the pen and advise and direct, but what we believe is that through knowledge that you can make far more intelligent products, far more smarter products, as long as you know how to collect and direct the information of that knowledge. As we have learned, of course, over the years, because as we think about buildings today, and for instance, not only buildings but also pavilions, they generate so much knowledge with the specialists we work with, that they of course give us what we call reverse engineering back towards the way how we for the rest then design our buildings. So this is what we believe is that prototypes for design are very necessary. Like maybe this pavilion is not a building, it's maybe not a furniture, it's not yet maybe an architecture, but it creates a lot of studies and possibilities of how here in Chicago we tested the construction of a way of an opening or a window could be introduced towards the city in a more diagonal manner, differently than looking at the city in a horizontal manner. But these ideas are then slowly transformed towards architecture, and that's what we also then do from the research, prototyping. We bring the prototypes towards the expansion of the architecture later on, and that's the same what we do with, of course, the furniture. This is a house we designed a few years ago for a site near Stuttgart, and you can see, for instance, this house that is almost used as a product. The roof, the walls, the ceilings, and the way how the construction works here is almost a prototype of the landscape. Because if you are in the house, it's almost like if the landscape is mirrored back as a parallax experience within the house. So maybe you can see that all-round kind of approach towards the design of this house is quite unusual. For instance, I mean, you never see a roof like that on every house, wherever you look onto, because most of the time a roof is not having a finished effect like this, although I think that when you look onto this particular part of the house, an integral quality was necessary in this landscape experience. But like I said, the development from the pavilion can turn maybe as a prototype into an architecture, but it can also turn into a furniture, like what we did with PROOFF. Is this sit table we are sitting around and sitting in here. And the idea of the sit table was that it could be a place where you could collaborate in, you could have a dialogue in different positions when you sit around the table. So it's a table and a place to sit in for a library. It could be there for a small office. You don't have to buy 20 furniture. If you have a small office, you can just buy the sit table. You can sit in it, you can meet in it, you can lunch on it. And the idea is actually also that we've noticed that young companies like to have this furniture because they can move it from one office to the next office. So actually I'd like to keep it there. The scales in which we work is maybe what you already mentioned in the introduction. Is maybe for us maybe not so important. We sometimes don't like to sort of think so much of that the furniture or product design is different in skill than an architecture. We believe that non-existence of a proper skill can combine itself in the way how you develop concept and knowledge. And that's our key for maybe strategy of design. Thanks.
I have at least one quick question for you, and that came up when you said, quite rightly, collaboration is not new. It is the scale and the tools with which you collaborate that grow, and you have this beautiful spiral. And a lot of the talk this morning has been about the relationship between the virtual world and the physical world. The virtual world makes a lot of changes in the physical world possible, what Jurgen was also talking about. And you, as having the shared platform, the shared knowledge, outsourcing, the research, collaboration. And then at a certain point I was wondering, because the old-fashioned way of collaboration is very focused and concentrated. It's a master and student. So then I wonder, because you also need focus and concentration to finally reach quality or a product or something that is clear-cut and really can exist in the outside world. So how do you manage it, this whole networked, sharing, collaborative, co-creative process? How do you manage the point where the decision is made, this is going to be it, that this is the table, that is the shape?
That is a very important question, because of course it's like you would maybe think that an orchestra doesn't need a director. That's maybe what we can all start to argue now, that there is so much possible today that you as a director maybe can let the orchestra play by themselves. But of course that means then you need to go back to a classical way of thinking about the orchestra and the director. I believe in a more contemporary way of thinking about an orchestra, and maybe I compare myself sometimes to a John Cage. If I have to be careful with the quality of John Cage's work, but the way how he works, and the beauty of the way how he works is that the quality is that he doesn't stand in front of the orchestra. He often experimented with the idea of moving around in the orchestra and let others play while he is actually in the orchestra himself, and then directs and organizes the way how the composition comes together. So that's quite interesting. So the performance and the orchestra and the way how, let's say, the quality of the product come together is coming together in a far more experimental way. Well, you know the latest film experiments coming out of the group of Dogma, you know, these kind of Scandinavian movie makers, who today now are using even actors during the process of making a film to being part of the process of thinking about the lines in the filmmaking itself on spot. So, and that's why I believe in.
Well, I understand the metaphors, they're very nice metaphors, but I really want to know how it works in your practice. Because ultimately there are moments, even if it's also, Jurgen was also talking about fluidity. And there's also this very interesting back.
Oh God.
Something is falling down. Oh dear. It's only the plastic, oh the poor man. Are you alright? No broken bones?
No.
Okay.
We are not responsible.
By this, it's said that we are not responsible.
We can discuss, is it about the design or the construction?
I don't know how much you are part of this whole conversation going on between Tandem and PROOFFLab and Leo and Proof, but also there's this back and forth. And at a certain point, again, somebody says, this is going to be it. So can you pinpoint the moment? Because in the end, it's virtual as much as physical, and it's fluid, yes. But finally, we're sitting here in very, very real furniture. There's detailing to be done, and of course, you have just shown that you can also sell the drawing or the method or whatever. Maybe Leo wants to comment.
Well, I think it's always an adventure. So I think it's not totally certain if a piece of furniture or a product is really will really be really successful. I think it's not totally sure, and I think and it's also that if you will give it time enough. So it's also a matter of time, because if your product is different and not exactly traditional, is that me?
I think
You
it's one of
should
the.
hold your microphone a bit closer.
Zal ik hem zo houden? Het gaat zo makkelijk. Oké. That's
I think it's.
It's amazing.
very good.
It is one of the microphones that
Yeah.
does it. I think you. Yeah.
Ben, get the other mic. Is it that? Yeah.
Of ben ik het? Doen we dit.
Which one is it?
Deze aan.
Okay.
Even.
Turn off this one and just use the two mics.
Dit gaat goed. Nee. Hij staat wel aan, maar hij doet niets. Toch?
It's on, it's on.
Zo. Nou, ik heb in ieder geval een harde stem. So I can talk even
Yeah,
without
that's
a
good.
mic. I think that's not really a problem.
It's worked. It works.
Huh? And the mic is on. Where were we? So I think you need also to give it enough time. Because if you get, say, not really a traditional product, it costs time. So it's a matter of belief. And
Of course, also I think because what you said there, where you started with, is like when you collaborate, will you still have the master that needs concentration, which I think is a big issue. But that's also why I don't believe in collaboration in the sense that you're going to tell what the others do. We only had discussions. We were not involved in the final designs, and I also believe in trust. Like I'm curious, so and that's also to do if I have to discuss the objects or the products that have been done, then I can only see where I see the qualities, and I do a different story than they will do themselves. But if I, for instance, take the cabinet that is made out of where normal walls are built with, then I like it, the idea that products become architecture. So it means that like you want to change the cabinet like 5 meters, so you have to work with 8 people, extremely heavy. Then you can say it's not practical, but it's like it means that like the building society has another kind of quality. It's like it's this working together, it's very physical, and you get these things involved in the product. So for me it's that I can see all these different qualities in the products which I can speak about, but it means that I'm allowed to use their knowledge for my benefit, which doesn't mean that I misuse their product. And it's also that we didn't have the discussion like how would it be done, because they get the concentration, I don't get the concentration, but it doesn't mean that everyone loses its concentration.
Yeah. So it's light and heavy in different ways.
Yes, but that is with the new technology. That
and
like
it's also fluid and very solid.
It has. I really think it does exactly what it did before, because collaboration has been made always. But like 10 years ago, you had like the designers as pop stars. It was all about like there was one name set, and it's still a bit like that. And it was all about that person. And we all know that behind that person there is a huge company or there is a big studio that does all the work. So the strange thing is that it's like it brings a person up front, but behind there was already a collaboration, only it was done slightly different.
Yeah, but that's about teamwork, but now you both are talking also about working with other people in the field.
Yeah, but it
in
is
your own field, in different fields.
But I think it's a very similar thing, because it's still you use each other's knowledge, but it gets posted completely different. Was it only first in your own office in Maps that you could look it up? Now, well, as Ben says, he puts it on the internet, which means it's like an open source, and you get some other things back. But if you're part of the membership, then you're allowed to use it also. It's like a library in that sense.
And you give and you take. It's like a library, one of those libraries. If you take a book, you have to bring a book, maybe.
Yeah, but it is actually. We often think that the development of social networking generates a far more abstract virtual world towards collaboration, and I think it's the opposite almost. I mean, actually, Facebook generates, at least, I mean, the people I found back, who I lost maybe from school time, makes me interesting to see them again. So actually, that means that that's what I've noticed, that through collaborating over the net, that it generates also far more interesting ideas in the way how you would like to meet each other, know about each other's work better, etc. So it's not so that we are not going to the factories anymore before we design a product. That's what we still do. We love to go there where the craft is there to be found in the way how we work with the hand still, of course. But And that's very important. I think that's maybe underestimated, that whole aspect of the development of the craft, because maybe we talk about that, but just with other techniques.
No, that's another form of concentration. This craft, ultimately something has to be made and made well. As Leo also said before we started this conversation, ultimately it has to be made very well.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to open up for discussion and questions. Is there anybody in the audience who has a question or wants to comment on what has been said up till now?
With this, Sophie, hi. With this ways of working, I'm certainly very aware of it in my work, and on a much smaller scale, and I still find it overwhelming, is how do you cope with overload? How do you filter? When you're doing all this collaboration, all this talking to more and more people, you're talking about this wonderful perfect calendar. I'd really like to have that working in my office without having to sit there entering all the things into the calendar that takes even more of my time. How do you manage all of it? Is the question or everybody?
But I think it is not so, that in a way, don't forget that even a century ago, when we would have to select the right material or the right construction, we still had to deal in architecture maybe 24 ingredients of elements you had to work with. So it's not so that well, at least what I've noticed with our profession, that it was always complex. It was always a very complex discipline. And luckily enough, maybe if you like a certain form of complexity as a designer, and I think I'm sure Jurgen likes also a form of complexity, otherwise you would not be interested in architecture as well, is that you slowly over the years, maybe you learn how to handle the family tree of complexity. That the family tree of complexity is related to maybe still 24 elements. But if you expand them in a fractal manner, then maybe there are a few thousand, but they are still brought back to a certain series of family of questions. If you relate it to materials, or if you relate it to particular kind of questions around new ways of using, for instance, colors. I'm so fascinated how the phenomenon of colors is still something that expands itself incredibly well. But fluorescent colors today, I mean, it's a development of the colors we would have, let's say, 20 years ago or 10 years ago. But the nice thing is that it is not so that we ask for complexity. No, the outside world is also becoming more complex and richer. So the profession expanded itself without asking it ourselves.
I believe human brain has a limited size, and this limited size has been there for tens and hundreds of thousands of years, and just its different complexity. You used to know all the leaves and the insects and whatever in the wood. Now you have to know the colors of it. I think we still have the same problem with overload. Anyone else in the audience have another question? I can walk to you.
Yeah.
Yes. Floor is Schouten.
Yeah, I think there's a nice mixture about one-off projects, prototyping, and products. But I was thinking, is there a moment that you decide that it becomes a product, or is it a natural process of questions from clients that makes it a product?
Well, perhaps I can give an answer on it. There is a moment, of course there's always a moment. I'm a bit, say, young because PROOFF is young in the experience about product development and to manufacture as well, then to market it to the market. And of course one of the main things is that at the end the price of a product has to be a certain marked conformity, so that the price is to be paid for the product. And that, I think, is at the end always one of the most important moments. Also, I learned that in starting from the design of a product until the end, well, I'm sure that we all know that giving birth to a child is 9 months, but sometimes many months or years before it started, and at the end still 9 months after the child is there. But I've learned that, say, 3 times 9 months, and then more or less you can say a product is to be made in a certain price that the market will accept the product.
Sorry, I don't understand. 3 times 9 months? What do you mean?
No, so it's that from the starting point that Ben or Jurgen had an idea until the birth of the product, it's 2.5, 3 years. To take the time to make it properly. Because there are so many possibilities in construction, in materials, etc., etc. And of course there is perhaps a certain thought about what the designer at first, or the architect, thought it was possible, and well, in a certain moment it's not really possible, because the quality is not bringing perhaps. But then it needs a lot of time to search, and at first to try to make it really as it is meant for. Just not to say already again too quick, okay, it's not possible.
And that's very important, that you are not a manufacturer as PROOFF, that you are a connector to other manufacturers.
Exactly, because you have a brighter scope, a brighter possibility. It's also this. It's also that is co-creating. It's mainly not one manufacturer. There are subcontractors, etc. But and also you have to put energy to help the manufacturer to make the birth possible. Because sometimes he's also thinking more in problems than in opportunities. So it costs some time. But that's the interesting point. And I think you have always products or furniture pieces which perhaps are not that successful in getting the profit out of it, but which are very important to give the signal or to have to give the authority to the collection itself, because it's always like a menu. It's not only the main course which counts.
Sure. And Jurgen said at a certain point, PROOFF moves beyond what is really needed. Now ultimately I think you all want to make something that is useful, so it's maybe not what is really needed, but what people now perceive as being needed. Because ultimately it will be needed, that is your sense of it.
But I think always that we, and especially now, we're so focused on solving problems rather than developing opportunities. I'm pretty sure if you just sign out like what a beach is, which is sand that goes into your clothes, salty water that keeps you sticky, sun that you have to be protected of, no one would start with the beach because you would think that's horrible. No one wants that. But when it's there, you get other opportunities. And I think in many cases that we see, and that's why I think the landscape of the whole thing is so important, because it is not just the thing, it's the whole surrounding, but it's also that you try to develop potential, that you think this is really great. Like you get this image that there's just the sun going down, and then you have these waves, and then you think, this is what I want. And then you go into that landscape, and then you see all the problems, but then you solve them because you already know this is where you're heading for. So then the towel comes in, a freshwater shower, then you get a coffee machine, and before you know,
you beach boy to rub your back.
Exactly, that's how it developed. But I'm sure that he wasn't there in the beginning, because there was nothing to rub.
I would have thrown him in. Any other question from the audience?
Samuel, you want to say that you are not responsible of the
beach.
Of what you change in
your
life,
no.
Because I think what is extremely interesting is that you are focusing on the idea of progressive office. So you start from how do people work today, but doing that you are influencing the way in which people is living at home as well. Because you have a calendar, because you have to choose when to go to the office if you need to be totally alone, because we don't have to forget that to be alone for a certain amount of time, it's extremely important nowadays for the creative process, otherwise everything gets brown. So thinking of this progressive office, you're not solving only problems, you are really influencing the way in which I live at home with my kids, at what time do I have to go out to work.
But you always can choose.
Of course.
No, but I think,
it's
but
interesting part.
yeah,
But
No.
I think also that work, you know, this is, I mean, I really agree with this idea of creating opportunities, especially in an environment today where everything is almost, you feel everything is open right now.
Yep.
You know, the economy is kind of in a phase where we think, oh God, what's the new inventive economy is going to be like? Do we have to learn from all the new startup companies because they're so brilliant in the way how they set themselves up, develop new business models, new ways of working, and I think that's where, I mean, I think we have to look at. You know, if Fordism was a kind of form of a strategy of a model what supported the old economy, where do we invent and look at? Where we can learn from when we can maybe try to create new open ideas for design when it comes down to the new economy. And I think these new environments of working are a beautiful place where we can experiment with right now. It's the same about living. You know, living is another question. How will we live in a kind of more complex society where we live in right now, where work is more combined with it, where families like to stay more with each other because of a maybe more difficult economy? They're wonderful questions.
What I really liked about what you said about the table was that these young offices would buy it because they would be moving space a lot of the time. They would grow, they would maybe go smaller again, but they would have this one object that would sort of collect everything they needed and that could go with them and with them.
Yeah.
And also that what Jurgen has been describing about this wall, it sounds a little bit like the same. It's sort of, and so then things become very solid because it is a hugely heavy table, and and also your wall is very hard to move, but you're also nomadic at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. So you take like a very big rucksack, you take it with you.
In a way, in that, maybe I don't know if you agree, but in a way, your product becomes a kind of architecture. Because it is so kind of substantial, you invest a little bit more, but it is, you know, you take the architecture with you. And I think that's maybe a new way of thinking
So
about the product design.
All these empty offices and empty spaces, or in a part of an airport, somebody said, or things.
Yeah.
Some more questions, because we're near, we have about 7 minutes left, I think.
How would you deal with the patent if you have an open source? That's interesting to me.
Yeah, patent. It's an interesting question, but this is coming from my own office. This is actually.
You want to answer that one in Amsterdam?
Yeah,
Ben?
we can. I
Okay.
can. Actually, everyone says now, but you know, be careful with patenting now and you know, securing copyrights. Of course, we have to secure these aspects in the future, especially when you have a real unique idea. But on the other hand, if you look at some of the other companies, like you should know how Google started or Amazon.com. They were totally not afraid to not patent their ideas and just to go onto the market, and this is the future. You have to be open with all your ideas in order to get information back. It's almost like with love. You know, just give all your love.
I have to say something about it. It's not something about myself, but about Hetzer de Meuron. When they was asked, sorry, but it's copied. Your design, your architecture is copied. He said, well, that's a compliment, and I have to act to be better again, and different again. I think that's a compliment. I think that's really a good answer. And well, there are always opportunities, so let's do it.
Yeah, but in China, our buildings are sometimes earlier built.
Yeah, then the drawings are
you know,
made.
we have problems.
Wonderful anecdote.
You know, we have problems.
About Zaha Hadid's building and the copy being built faster than the original.
Yeah, we have the same too.
You have the same?
Yeah, we have the same.
Yeah. And it's a compliment in China.
It's a compliment, but it is a little bit. You can imagine that my clients are here. My clients are here too. Is that, you know, my clients are sometimes not happy with this.
I understand. Any other questions? Because we will be wrapping up, I think.
Yeah.
Joyce.
Do you think if we become really good in this knowledge-based network, that we can skip the idea of making products or projects, that every question can become a project and that's it, and that we take all the knowledge with us to the next project instead of reproducing that
Yeah.
idea?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. You know that maybe the whole idea, and that was maybe it's also a nice question to you, because in a way the question of when and how do we where decide when is something a product is a nice question, because I do think that it could be maybe seen as that today it's not only the masterpiece product alone. Maybe it's a series of products, whereby sometimes the series of the product is an idea, like maybe we talk about here too. Maybe one idea is the new office environment. Although we have not designed the office environment as an idea, but we give some instruments for the office idea. And that's a whole new way of thinking, I think.
But in fact, you said it yourself about this table. It's an object in itself, but it also changes the way people use their offices.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And then the other thing is that you might get a product as a recipe. It's already happening a lot. That you get the recipe is the project, and then people buy their own wood and whatever, and they maybe even find their own carpenter, but the recipe is the product.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
perhaps I think that not everything will become a product which is fitting in a collection, you know, as a standard. I think it will be much more project orientated.
But then that's interesting for you, because you will move beyond the solid, maybe. Would you do that?
Just say yes.
No, but look for the start now with PROOFFLab with the tandem. Will every new thing over here what is designed became really a product in the PROOFF collection or in a collection, or will it be project orientated being manufactured?
What do you mean by that last? It will be
That's
manufactured on order.
well, everybody knows all architects designers make things for a project, and then it's a pity. It's only for the project, and there are much more possibilities in other projects to deal with it again. But it's mainly not happening. But because it's not happening, because the world was not so open in possibilities as nowadays. So I think that will happen. So a design is not died yet, but also not that the design will become really a product. I think so. That's I think the definition. A product in a collection is different than a product which you can start again and again from the drawing in a project again, or what is perhaps related to the basic design. It can grow itself.
Yeah. Okay. I think, one last question. Can you shout?
Yeah, I will shout. I have maybe one more question for the tandem offices, also here, and some of them are on the edge of listening to the architect. So maybe just one question: how do they think about? Yeah, how do they think about the first step in the co-creation process and maybe future of the tandem? Maybe I'm also close to it, but I just want to pose the question.
The first step, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, it just started. The tandem is just launched. It's just the first tiny step in
co-creation.
But asking to react from the tandem.
To the tandem.
So that
one is in front.
Oh, okay.
What I found interesting in this collaboration was the difference in scale that the two studios work with. Because from the dialogues we had during the process, what I noticed is that architects because of the scale, because of the size of a human within that scale, what they often make is something where you cannot really control what you make, but you give a certain, you direct more a person within a building, and that openness that they were talking about I find really interesting. You come up with different dialogues and solutions. So I find that the combination of different putting different disciplines together very interesting.
I think for us, we approached the project. I'm Jo Tailleur from Architectenvelden Tailleur and in fact from IAS. So we approached in fact beside the collaboration.
Oh Jesus. Can we throw away these chairs?
They are not chairs, that's clear.
That's your partner. That's your partner.
It's no my colleague.
It was your partner.
Inge is sitting on another chair.
No.
Oh, they are not chairs.
No, I think
Why
that's
it was
the
about.
thing. I think that they will.
Okay, sorry. Already from the viewpoint of the project, we really approached it as an architect, in the fact that we didn't look already on further steps. We really worked on it as a kind of specific question related to what we always do in our practice itself. And not within the mind a kind of product at the end, but rather a kind of attitude, presenting a kind of attitude and presenting a kind of working method. It was not about making an object, making furniture. It was making a kind of strategy, you could say.
Now I think we're really going to wrap up. We need coffee and tea and water and everything to revive ourselves. I've heard some important words. If you talk about co-creation, the most important maybe is trust. And if you trust people, you give them space. And you choose them because you are curious. There's curiosity. What they will come up with the question you pose them, it's like you drop a little coin in a machine and you don't know what's going to come out, but you trust them to come out with that. You choose the people and you work with them, I think, on the basis of passion, a shared passion. That is a different kind of sharing. I think if you want to create anything, you need passion. And then you also want to share knowledge, because you have this trust and this curiosity in what this other person is going to come up with. So if you want knowledge from them, you have to give knowledge of yourself. And finally, I think in the end, it all does come down to craft. Not only the craft of making, but the craft of thinking. There's a craft in thinking. And I think that is this question what was running around, when do you choose, how do you choose, when you know that you're there, if it's a product or a process or whatever. That is a craft. You are a craftsman of thinking, of thought, as much as I think all designers, manufacturer or middleman, craftsman. And I think finally, that is what sort of keeps us stable in this floating, fluid, virtual world of today. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you, panel.
Thank you.